Okay, so now we're going to do a video on really applying a lot of the things that we've learned so far. So let's review first. So far we've learned that the sum of the angles of a triangle is equal to, you should know, 180 degrees. Very good. The second thing, the sum of the two shortest sides of a triangle is what compared to the longest side, the length of the longest side, and you should know that's got to be greater than. Okay, third one, equilateral triangles have equal sides, or sides that have the same measure, or congruent sides, however you want to say that. Equal angular, okay, very similar to equilateral. Lateral means sides, angle of course means angle, angular, have equal angles. In other words, all the angles are the same. All right, congruent triangles have congruent sides, and they have congruent angles. And you remember that congruent means the same measure, coincides, congruere. Okay, number 6, in an isosceles triangle, the two base angles, the two angles that come off the two legs that are the same, doesn't necessarily have to be on the bottom. You could have a isosceles triangle like this, and those two sides are the same. These would be your, in a sense, base angles. They are equal. Okay, those two are the same. All right, next one. Okay, so now we have complementary angles, or two angles whose sum is 90 degrees. Remember that supplementary angles are two angles whose sum is 180. Now notice it has to be two, it has to be a pair of angles, not 3, not 1, not 5, 2 angles. Each time it has to be only 2 angles. Vertical angles are congruent. Vertical angles, remember, are equal, or you could say congruent. Their measures are equal, or the angles are actually congruent, because the angles actually coincide on top of each other. Okay, vertical angles, you remember, are ones that are opposite each other. They have the same vertex, but they are opposite of each other. So let's look at this. Measure of angle 1. If angle 1 is 120 degrees, because of some of the things we've learned, we've gone over just a little while ago, you can get all these other angles. Well, angle 2, we notice, is what to angle 1? Remember, they lie on a straight line. I can't make this very straight, but anyway, they lie on a straight line, which means we know that is 180 degrees, a straight angle or a straight line. So if that's 120, this has to be 60 degrees, because 60 plus 120 must equal the 180. Okay? So angle 2 must be 60 degrees. Angle 3 is exactly opposite. It's vertical to angle 1, so it must be 120. Or if you don't like that, if you don't think that might be true, you could see again, angle 2 and 3 are supplementary because they lie on a straight line. So 60 plus 120 is 180. And then angle 4, the same thing. It has to be 60 because it's vertical, or because it's vertical, because it's supplementary to 120, it has to be 60. Okay, hope that helps. Next one. Okay, number 10. Now we're going to try to apply a lot of these things, even more so than we did just in those last 2 examples. Okay, you have a bunch of angles here. We're given that the measure of NYU, and I like to always tell my students, just let your fingers do the walking, which used to be the advertisement for Yellow Pages, which we don't really have anymore. But anyway, you got to make sure you're pointing to what it says. NYU. So make sure you understand NYU. You got to use your fingers. That equals 118. The whole thing is 118. Then the measure of PYU, the shorter guy, the smaller one, is 65. So you might want to go ahead and write this and put in 65 there. So you've got to find what is NYP. That's the one you don't know. Well, since the whole thing is equal to the 2 little guys, wrote that little equation there, the NYU is equal to the 2 smaller angles, then we know that this one's 118, just substitute in, and then we don't know NYP, we're trying to find that, and then angle PYU is a 65. So we can plug in those 2 things. Then we just solve it like an equation for an unknown. We subtract 65 from both sides and get 53, I believe that's right. Yes, yes. So N, this one right here, has to be 53 degrees. Okay? Okay, next one. Now we have we got a triangle, we got angles, we got a right angle, we got a lot of stuff right here. All right. So we have this whole thing set up. We're given that angle, angle P, is 48. This angle right here, angle PMA, that's 68. You know, that angle at M, the large angle at M, is 90 because that has the box, okay? So we got to find all the missing angles that are listed here. So I went ahead and numbered them. T, I'm just going to call T, so I didn't need to number that. But I have 1, 2, 3, and then 4 and 5. Okay, that's point A. That vertex is point A. Okay. All right, well, let's see. Since P plus T, angle P plus angle T, it has to be 90 degrees because M is 90 degrees, and we have a triangle, and that's got to equal 180 degrees, so these two have to be 90, because that one already is the 90. So if P is 48, then T is going to be 90 minus the 48, which is 42. So I've got that that's 42 degrees, angle T. So you can, once you get it, you go ahead and write it in there, which might help you for the rest of it. Then I said, okay, well, I know that 3 plus this one has to be 90 degrees, okay? So that's got to be, so angle 3 has to be 22, because 22 plus 68 is 90. So 3 here is 22 degrees, okay? Then I noticed that, well, this plus this plus this formed a triangle. So I know that all these three angles have to equal 180. And I noticed this is sort of obtuse, so I know this can be pretty big size. So I know that 3 plus 2 plus t also equal 180. Then angle 3 is 22. Angle 2 I don't know, so I called that n. And angle t is 42. So I had to add those together, which was 64, and subtract it from 180, which equaled 116. And then I know from before, if 2 is 116, I know angle 4 here is 116. And now angle 1, I could have gotten a bunch, some of these you can get different ways. So there's more than one way to find the angle measure. So you may be thinking of different ways, which is fine. Angle 1, I noticed this plus is another triangle, has to equal 180. Okay, so I went ahead and did it that way and got 64. The other way I could have done it, though, is to go ahead and subtract this from 180, which is what I end up doing, and realize that 116 plus 64 will give me 180. And if angle 1 is 64, then angle 5 is 64 also. So you might need to pause that and go over that a little bit slower. But isn't that amazing? We just knew 2, 3 angles, basically, and we can get all the rest of those angles. So that's amazing what a little bit of geometry can do for you. Okay, these are two simple ones to end with, 12 and 13, and then tomorrow in class we'll be doing a lot of these, a lot of practice in this. All right, well, I noticed that this is a right angle. I know that this is 70, so these two angles are, you should be thinking complementary, equaling 90 degrees. So if this is 70, this has to equal 20 degrees. All right, this one I know these two angles are line a straight line, so altogether it's 180 degrees here. And these are supplementary. So if this is 45, I take 180 minus 45. I borrow, equals 135 degrees. Okay? All right, hopefully you'll be able to understand that. We'll be able to practice a lot of this tomorrow in class.